Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Arwin, Brian, Neil, Sleeping Warrior, and a whole bunch of people on Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hey.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
afternoon all.
Hey.
Hello, Jin. Good to see you.
Morning, good afternoon.
Hello. Nice to have you. Quick announcement. So there won't be a live show tomorrow. It's my wife's birthday. So just so you know, in case anybody questions you after the fact, why isn't there a live show? That's why there's not a live show. So there won't be a live show tomorrow. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
No, Galileo was wrong. Thanks, P900.
You guys seen the video on YouTube adverts for like a handheld monoscope? Anybody seen that advert on YouTube?
Yeah, the one that clips onto the back of your camera, your mobile phone camera.
You've got it, and it produces the world's most amazing pictures. I just found it interesting. Somebody pulled apart the advert and found that one of the pieces of Zoom footage was from a P900. That's class. Look, it zooms amazingly, and you're like, no, the P900 zooms amazingly. Anyway, any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No. No, you can calculate it as though it was, if you just assume it.
No, we're not spinning in Nottingham.
Hey, what, Meekin?
Hi, guys.
If you had axial rotation, everyone would notice it because there would be an effect by it. So if they say the Earth is spinning, what would the effect have to be, and what would we have to observe?
Coriolis effect, 15 degrees an hour deviation as we rotated underneath things not attached, causing things like aeroplanes to seem like they're taking a curved path when they're actually travelling straight. So likewise, you can induce this effect from a roundabout. Just look at an aeroplane when you're on a kid's roundabout. Looks like it's turning around in the air. It's not. It's just a not actual deflection caused by you turning underneath. Earth is claimed to have that effect to the tune of 15 degrees an hour. So we would see things deflect at 15 degrees an hour if we were turning beneath them, as is claimed. It's called Coriolis deflection.
Well, their only answer is the sun moving at 15 degrees an hour, and they say it's because the Earth is rotating. But if the Earth is rotating and it causes the sun to appear to move 15 degrees an hour, but it's not the sun moving because it's so far away in their model, so it's really the Earth moving, then a helicopter, a drone, a hot air balloon, anything above the reference plane into another reference plane would have that deviation, would it not?
Yeah, they claim things drift at 15
Can I add
degrees an hour.
one thing to that real quick?
Go ahead.
It's not only that they say that there's an axial tilt. If you're going to say Coriolis, a lot of the global model, heliocentric model, says there's a wobble too. The wobble should, they say there's a tilt and a wobble. The wobble is, from what I understand, a way of mediating all of the differential equations and the ways that they could account for incorrect errors and deficiencies. There's a wobble, they claim, too.
Yeah, but
Is
I'm
the wobble
using...
not precession.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're on a different subject.
Well, you never hear them account for the wobble. They'll say there's an axial tilt, it's spinning, Coriolis, but where do snipers account for the wobble? You never hear them talk about that.
It's a fair point, but yeah, their claim is Coriolis, Earth turning beneath snipers' bullets for them to have to lead the target, because when the bullet leaves the ground, travels through the air, Earth turns beneath it. Well, that's 15 degrees an hour deviation as Earth turns beneath a sniper's bullet. Likewise, it's claimed by Neil deGrasse Tyson that Earth turns beneath a football for it to score the winning goal. Well, that claim is Earth turning beneath stuff not attached. It would manifest in aeroplanes like you'd see on a roundabout. Same thing would occur on Earth if it was turning. The problem is that if it was happening because we're observing things drift from the ground, then you'd have shortened flight times when travelling west, because Earth would be turning beneath them. We don't have the Coriolis deviation that they claim we have, because the effect isn't observed.
Well, that's my point. They only could use the luminaries, but flat Earth is saying we're stationary and the luminaries are moving. So it's either the luminaries are moving, and that's the 15 degrees, or the Earth is moving. And in their model, it's the Earth moving. Well, in their model, they got a problem, because if the Earth is moving and the luminaries appear to drift at 15 degrees an hour caused by the Earth rotation, then anything in the inertial reference frame would also do the same, and it doesn't. So the whole argument dies right there.
Right. I've given a couple of references in the past to a video that Carl Jobst made. And Carl Jobst, for any gamers out there, is a guy who covers speedrunning. And his particular involvement in this description is because of Coriolis being a real bugger of a subject to debate. Always was, for me, just the nightmare subject that could take up 2 hours of your life and not get you anywhere. Not result in a win for either side, lots of confusion for both. And it just frustrated me. Now, the reason I bring up Carl Jobst is because yesterday he released a video about speedrunning a game called Doom, a very old shooter from the 90s. And in this game, second game, there's a particular part of the game where you have to run across ledges, and they're only a couple of pixels wide. And if you fall off, you've then got to go back to the beginning. It's like walking a tightrope, but with turns in it. And this particular guy called Looper, that's his screen name that he runs these games under, had the same description as I use for Coriolis effect in terms of my frustrations with arguing it, as he had with these ledges. So I drew a parallel between my frustrations with arguing Coriolis and Looper's frustrations with running these speedruns on these very tight, very narrow ledges in this game called Doom. Anyway, the point of the story is that after time and a lot of frustration and a lot of learning and a lot of what they call grinding, which is just doing it again and again and again and again and again till you get it right, eventually this guy Looper learns to love the ledges because he gets to learn how to do them, and then he can do them very efficiently. Now, I've got an opportunity to bring this up because yesterday Carl Jobst brought out a video, and it's slightly off subject, but I just think I'll mention it because I think it's brilliant. I even told my wife, and I'm not even a gamer, but I just thought this was interesting. This guy Looper was involved recently with a little speed run to try to get the world record on Doom 2, which is just like an extension of the original game. It's basically the same game. Anyway, and there's a bit in one of the levels, and I didn't twig what was being talked about when Carl Jobst talked about this, but they're trying to get up to this high platform, and what they do is they line themselves up in the corner and then blast themselves, causing themselves damage, but it throws them up high enough to get onto this ledge and end the level. So it's a cheat, basically. Not a cheat, but like a tactic to get to the end of the level quicker. And they show them doing it, and then Carl Jobst mentions that Looper, and I didn't know his name when I'd given the examples last time, he can just do it because he knows how to do the ledges. It happened to be the same level. So lots of people for 20 years have been trying to figure out a way of getting past these stupid ledges. And then in the speedrun, I get to my final point, right? They showed the difference between the guy who's figured out a cheat to get up to the ledges, which is the standard way of running this level, and Looper actually playing the game as intended and running the ledges. And he was faster. In other words, for just learning how to do it and doing it correctly, he was quicker than the people that had figured out a cheat to do the same level. He was still quicker, right, doing it on the ledges. Anyway, it parallels me. It's giving me goosebumps telling this because I can now draw the same parallel with Coriolis effect again and say it's one of those arguments that's actually, unlike the ledges where the parallel falls apart, very simple to understand once you've got it. In other words, once you've got the knack of the argument, what is actually occurring to call it Coriolis, you on the ground turning, like on a school roundabout, looking at things not on the roundabout, moving because you're turning. So not actual deflection. Now, that's easy for me to summarise, but if you're in a debate with some fundy who's telling you about the plane and correcting for things, you're not going to catch that that's been taken away from you turning on a roundabout. In other words, it's like me saying, I'm looking at the plane seeming to turn 180 degrees because I've turned 180 degrees on a roundabout in school playground. And the plane hasn't actually turned around, it just seemed to. And then the person you're arguing with going, well, the plane can correct for that because it's got engines. And you go, what? Correct for what? It didn't actually turn around. But again, you've got to understand the argument to be able to snap into, what are you talking about? The plane isn't going to correct for anything. It's me observing it seem to drift. Keeping their argument where it is on the ground. That's what Coriolis is. But then knowing how to take it away from the ground and saying, but in the plane, that if the ground's turning beneath for you to observe Coriolis from the ground, then the plane's going to have its flight time shortened. So as a flat earther, I can take this argument into the plane's position and detail what would happen as a consequence. But they can't. They have to stay on the ground because that's where Coriolis is observed from. As soon as they stop detailing it, detailing what the bullet will do, what the plane will do, what the football will do, well, that's not Coriolis. For Neil deGrasse Tyson, he was sneaky because he's describing it from the stands. He's giving it from his point of view. He's watching the ball curve. So he's giving his account of Coriolis as he turns beneath it on an Earth that's spinning. Clever. He doesn't have to explicitly say it because he's describing it, while he's obviously assumed to be turning underneath the ball when he gives his description. But that's the only way to describe Coriolis for them, for the Globers. Not for us, Simon Dan, hope you're listening. But most of the people you're going to argue with, I like Simon Dan. They don't even understand what Coriolis is, and will literally go to the extent of telling me that my reference frames are ruined when I don't have any. I'm debunking theirs with a good understanding. And likewise, Looper's destroying even the people who are trying to find a cheat for a level because he's just got a good understanding of the level. He's just done it to the point where he's good at it. So you can be that Looper guy. You can just be good at the tightrope that is Coriolis effect. And it is a tightrope. It does parallel with it because you can easily fall off if you don't know what the argument consists of, if you don't appreciate where they have to tie themselves to the ground that's claimed to be turning underneath stuff to see the effect, to then say, if we're turning underneath stuff to see the effect, it's going to shorten flight times, and not let them start detailing how, when they describe their Coriolis effect, they can account for things that are actually drifting, not drifting because of engines or whatever they claim, when the effect takes place from the ground. Now, most of the people listening are going to have lost me halfway through this description. And I'm detailing it with myself. I haven't got an opponent here. So you can imagine it's a complicated description. But if you can go to Wikipedia and just look at the GIF on the right with the two blue turning platforms, where it describes a ball seeming to curve as you watch it, turning underneath it. Or I use a tree. You're on a roundabout looking at a tree. The tree seems to come towards you on the roundabout. Obviously, because it's a tree, it's rooted into the ground, not moving at all, and doesn't have to account for this effect. Yeah? Anyway. That's Coriolis. It's a long, convoluted shout-out to Carl Jobs and Looper for his excellent achievements in Doom speedrunning and learning how to play the game properly to beat all the people who even cheat. Not cheat, just find a way around a difficult part. Anyway, any questions on Coriolis? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next housekeeping questions. And thank you for bearing with me.
Something there, Nathan. What's really amazing is that when you see the cheat, how 100 people, once they know that there's a cheat, will only resort to doing that cheat, and that very few will actually try and explore like that Looper did to find another way to achieve the same end. But the way that the ballers also have this preconceived idea of tackling Coriolis, and they all just parrot that same, it's like using the cheat. It causes them damage. It might achieve a similar end, but it's not the right way like the Looper has figured out in that system.
Exactly. And he was the thing that's so beautiful about this story is he was doing it better than the cheaters. And I hate calling them cheaters. They're not cheating, right? Doing what they were doing is not cheating. It's well within the parameters of the game. It's not cheating. I'm just saying the people who've figured out a workaround, the pit that they're doing it from isn't designed to be a pit for maneuvering up to the ledge. They've just figured a way of doing it. Good for them. It works within the game mechanics. It's not cheating, so therefore it's perfectly acceptable. But by the same token, Looper's quicker. So, that to me is just beautifully ironic. It's like, no, just doing it the way it's intended in terms of the actual mechanics and the way that the person who programmed it went, well, you've got to walk across the ledges. And if you fuck it up, you fall off and you've got to start again. Not if you fuck it up, you'll fall off, blast yourself from a corner onto the ledge that you're aiming for. So I don't know. I just think it's beautiful. Big shout out to Looper. I respect that so much. Anyway,
Nathan, to your
What,
question.
what did
Vi-
Zanuck say?
Yeah, now Virus is saying in chat, since we're on Coriolis, Nathan is giving his own version of Coriolis. Now, Virus, come on the show right now. You've been on so many times on this subject, had your rear end handed to you all these times, and you're bragging in chat that we have our own version, or Nathan has his own version of Coriolis, when you're the one that can't make sense of it. Come on, right now.
yeah, that's something they do when an argument defeats them. So they turn the argument into the man. So this isn't Coriolis arguments with me understanding it and detailing how their argument falls apart. It's Nathan's Coriolis effect. All right. Well, no. In reality, it's projection, because they invent their own Coriolis deviation, which is called Globiolus effect. That's how we've ascribed their detailed description of how actual deflection is negated. Well, that's not Coriolis effect, but they'll project that straight onto me. They do it with QE. Well, this is QE's scientific method. I'm sure he's absolutely flattered. It's not.
It's very annoying, though.
So is he saying
Exactly.
you and your reference frames are ruined?
They all do it. Or nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve. Shout out to Amanda Young, who says, big shout out to Arwin. Gives him big hearts and 100.
Shout out retracted.
How dare you? You can't retract an Arwin shout out.
That's
Shout out
horrible.
Reese,
Shout
baby.
out, Amanda.
Somebody get him off. Kick him out.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate.
Morning chocolate.
Any evidence that
Morning
guys.
chocolate.
Go on, get them all out. Say hello. Hello.
Morning, chocolate.
Yeah, hello, good morning. Good morning,
Mr.
Chocolate.
Cool and popular.
Hello,
Everyone wants to
everybody.
say hello to him.
We don't need to have an episode of the Waltons when it's chocolate joint. Come on.
He's like the
It's
Fonz,
like-
isn't
it's
he?
like Cheers, man.
I was going to say Fonzie. You like Fonzie? Hey, it's
Snacks.
Fonzie.
I can't even get it in. Snacks moved in the front. Hey, chocolate.
Needs to bang the jukebox.
Oh, he's gone. He'll be back.
Is he gone? We're telling him how great he is. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
What is it? Owen says it's the assumption of physicality bias.
Physical assumption. Oh, well, I won't take it away from you there, Arwin. Physicality assumption bias. The assumption that Mars, for example, is a physical rock in a sky vacuum with enough atmosphere not dispersing into the vacuum for helicopters to work on it. You know, that kind of complete nonsense where you're assumed physical rock in the sky violating the second law of thermodynamics with its atmosphere not dispersing into a sky vacuum you've just travelled through to get there. Yeah, that kind of nonsense.
You just have to make the helicopter rotors go at the magic speed, and then there you go.
Do the gas particles that are not expanding into the vacuum also have a magic speed where they slow down, reach absolute zero, burn their bras in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics, and then fall back down to Mars, go down, go boom boom?
Yeah, there you go. You just described it.
Man, I'm doing better than a baller. Second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to Mars, right, fundies? No, you've just got Owen's physical assumption bias. That and a load of CGI. Oh, how comforting. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
No.
I'm glad this question is still asked. It messes a lot of different type of globers. It messes
Yeah,
them up.
no.
Go on, whoever it was. Marilyn.
Why do you think that is, Sin Cleanser? Like, why do you think it messes with a lot of, heliocentrists?
Because it encompasses a lot of what physics dives into. Pressure, resistance, gases, different types of states of matter. All these things are encompassed in that question alone. It's a great question.
By the way, it's one that kids can understand. That's what woke up my 11-year-old niece. She was in the store and she was talking about space and talked about a balloon and a tire and gas pressure, and she instantly looked at me like, I'm like, what does that mean? And now she's all into looking at space.com and going, look, it says might, maybe, and everything. This doesn't make sense. How do they know? And I go, there you go. How do they know? And that's where it starts. So gas pressure without a container is a very, very big conversation that needs to happen, especially with kids.
Yeah, it's called the Jew.
Very, very dynamic question.
Yeah.
Sorry, very dynamic.
I
It's a
agree.
wicked subject
It's
to
one
talk
of
about.
it's one of the mainstays, I think, of flat Earth.
Well, you just talking when you say that, it's like there's going to be a certain faction of people that go, it's disgusting. They're talking about this with kids. No, I talk about it with my kids. It's the second law of thermodynamics.
Exactly, Nathan. Exactly. I get that a lot. And how dare you, as a woman, you shouldn't have kids and how, speak to kids like this. No, I'm just telling them the truth, reality. And if they want to get mad about that, raw science, I don't know what to tell people in this world. But I also, when you tell this to kids, you have to understand that they can't go to school after these things. Come home and talk to mom or your aunt or whatever about the things that they teach you in school. Because if you stand up and say it in school, you're going to have problems. But if a parent tells this to their children and it says, come to me for other things, it shouldn't be a problem.
So you're bad for teaching a kid that you need a balloon in order to have a balloon, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. If it goes against their fundy belief, it's akin to 200 years ago, you're not being able to go against anything they described in terms of what they called the heavens. We're calling it the sky. They call it, heliocentrists call it space, a vacuum in violation of natural law. And therefore, if you go against that, even if it's using normal, understood laws of nature, then that's considered bad by people who are like, yeah, but if you teach them this law of nature in that context, it goes against my heliocentric belief. I don't care.
Exactly. I don't care.
When you send your children to public schools and it's an indoctrination center, and they come home and they don't even know basic math, English, history, but they are into all these social things. What are you supposed to do as a parent?
Well, you can have different sets of information too as a teenager or a child. You can still do a test. You can answer the questions. You just have other information in your brain as well. You can still do well in school.
You're missing my point. They're trying to program my children the way they want them to turn out. I want them to learn math, English, history.
They teach them math, English, history.
But they don't.
No.
I'd rather teach you that it rains diamonds
missed what I
on
said.
Neptune or something.
I said, so, I didn't use the word, you teach them maths, English, history.
No, I did. I sent all my kids to private school, cost me a bundle each month. And we checked their homework. We talked to them. We took my kids. I had so much involvement in my kids, it's ridiculous.
My kids
That's the main key.
I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. I think that's the way it should be.
Well said, Chocolate.
Instead of sending them to a building with people you don't know to teach them things you don't want them to teach you.
Yeah, so we started with private school. Then we did homeschooling the remainder of the majority until after high school.
You can't moan about the state teaching your kids stuff if you don't know what they're teaching you. And your job as a parent to look at that. And if you feel the need to correct it, correct it. And, I think 99.9% of the population, the level of authority of the way a parent speaks, your child will listen, even if it's contradictory, because dad knows best or mum knows best, and that opinion is much more valid if then explained, and it's an opportunity to go through the rhetoric with them. I've bored my kids with gas pressure, but they understand it now, both for the school and how it doesn't apply to the heliocentric model. I don't ask them to answer in relation to the heliocentric model in their school stuff. That's for them to know.
That's
for the big world.
That's kind of what
my sentiments exactly.
That's kind of what I was saying though. Like you could
sentiments exactly there.
The teenager or the child could still know that heliocentrism is bollocks, but the child can still apply the information to pass the tests. You see, it's playing the game well so you succeed in life and you don't miss out because you've taken on some flat earth concept and then you miss out on all that society has to offer you. That's where the ballers are criticizing this and calling it what they call it. That's the danger. Can you see that?
The danger's already happened though, and I'm looking at the children right now going to virtual school and everything else, and I have to have my best friend call me to say, hey, I need help with my kids because they're behind on the work and I don't understand any of this. I mean, when you got parents right now so indoctrinated and they're just so busy that they don't even understand the model, they don't understand science, they don't understand algebra, math, or any of this to even teach their kids, we have an issue. And this is why parents are not involved, because when they go to get involved, they can't do the work. They've dumbed down society so much now that parents cannot be parents. So they want to give up their children to these authorities because they think it's best, because they don't know. That's the issue. When we have adults that don't understand what's happening, you don't even understand algebra anymore, because guess what? They don't use it. Well, that's an issue, because you have to be able to help your kids go through this homework and everything. And if you can't, what's going on here?
Well, that's a societal problem that we could get into, but we're still on housekeeping. But the problem with people
right.
not caring enough about their kids is what you're describing, because even if we were in an ideal world and the education system provided precisely and nothing but the truth about the world as we understand it, and they could easily argue that's what they're doing now, by the way, then what would you have to do as a good parent anyway? Well, you'd have to obviously make sure they understood, assuming it's all correct, and correct them where they're wrong, educate them where they don't understand, etc., etc., etc. But the majority of people don't do that at all. They can't wait.
There was an incident with my lad, and as I've
That's
always asked him,
if I may just,
not to toe the line as such, but to give the answers that are going to get you the marks. Now, hopefully I've taught him critical thinking, and I was exceptionally proud of his homework the other week, which he was asked to write about, and you can imagine the line they wanted him to take, which was to discuss the gender pay gap. And he Jordan Peterson the shit out of it. And I've never taught him about this. He's done this himself. And honestly, super pride. Yeah. Now that to me is his critical thinking. He's allowed to put that. He's allowed to address that with facts and that, because it's there. It's in the mainstream. It's discussable. But I wouldn't, and I'd have kicked his arse if he'd have answered a heliocentric question with the truth. I just want him to put that rhetoric, as Merle says, and get the point. But
Indeed,
he's demonstrated to me he's got the critical thinking that I wanted him to have, and he knows when to use it and when not to use it.
It's not to use it. It's the same as when you're being taught about in a religious education context, for the sake of argument, about an answer that requires you to contextualize it within the base of the education received within the religion that is being discussed or educated. Well, you would, by the same token, not teach your kid to say, well, you know, here's why I think the skeptic's view of Christianity stands in violation of the question that's specifically framed about how Christians describe it as being. Do you see what I mean? You wouldn't say to your kid, yeah, when you're in the religious education exam, detail how you think the question is phrased incorrectly because you have a totally different viewpoint. Because what they're teaching you is how that religion works. So they're obviously going to ask you to frame your answer around your understanding of how it works, not your views on how it doesn't work.
It's a bit like, I suppose it's a bit like doing English lit, getting to Shakespeare and going, no, it's all bollocks. It was written by Dr. John Dee or something. You know what I mean? He was fake. He never existed. Shakespeare, end of. Yeah, you're not going to get the marks, are you? Even though
it's exactly saying, well, while I appreciate the eloquence, I feel that iambic pentameter wasn't the right methodology of language to write in. You're like, well, that's not what you're being asked. You're being asked to describe in terms of your emotions towards the piece and your how you feel it might alienate an audience in modern times or whatever they're asking you. And it's like, no, you've got to understand how the question's phrased. If it's being let's bring it back on topic. If it's being phrased within a framework of heliocentrism, you want your child to understand that that is how the question needs to be answered, because it's a mark in terms of, yes, they're phrasing it within, you must understand this is actually your world, but providing your kid already understands that, well, given your critical thought, do you think that is your world? No. Well, you don't have to do that when it comes to RE, but you do have to do it when it comes to some of the things they call science. Well, yeah, so be it.
Yes.
Yeah, but at least with Shakespeare,
that's
you have
what-
an option to be or not to be.
Well, that's what I did with my children. That's exactly what I did with my children. Can anybody hear me here today? That's what I did with my children. I explained to them that they have to learn the truth and the lie. Understand both. Put the answer they gave you, the lie answer, on the question paper. When you hand your teacher that you don't believe what you wrote down on the answer paper, it was incorrect, even though you passed it.
Well, in
Them to
doing
say.
so, it's very useful for the child as well.
That's what I
because
said. And
people generally, if you think of how this particular lie, so the heliocentric deception, if you think of how it's structured in society and how it manifests in terms of people's belief in it, that is very much akin to just general human behaviour. There's the 95% truth, 5% little white lie that gets you by with a little bit more ease. The truth and lie system, if you want to call it that, which the alternative conspiracy realm do describe, the general overall matrix style of government and all the other control structures we have around us, laws and bills and all the rest of it. Well, within that context, you think, how does a general Joe I meet on the street behave? Well, most of the time you can assume 95% of what they're saying is just, plausible, non-lies. But occasionally, if there's something mixed in with their completely believed, non-rhetorical, non-preachy based information that they're giving you, when you can teach a kid that just within the language itself, some of the things will give you the impression that the world is a particular way. Just certain words. For example, atmosphere. When you're just talking about the air you're breathing. That is a part of a language that you could, if you wanted a hard time in life, challenge it every time someone used it in day-to-day life, but understand that when you're using that language, it's there for a reason. It's there because you're in a particular paradigm when we're contextualizing it in exams, and you need to actually portray that paradigm back to the examiner so that they understand that you understand it. You don't have to believe it, and it's better to critically think it and critically analyze it, rather than just accepting it because you've been asked it in a certain way. In other words, the process of detailing this to a kid, even if it was RE, religious education, would still leave them at the end of the process thinking critically. And in the time that I spent in a private school, that was one of the things they taught me, and I had no idea that it was an exceptional or not taught in state schools. I didn't know that at the time. So critical thought, when JLB started talking about it, like, yeah, obviously, everyone does that. No, they don't. And you don't realise that the reason is because there's a certain time in certain schooling, in certain societal, frameworks, where they will teach certain groups of people critical thought. Other people, the majority, they won't. With very good reason. They're preparing you to be a good worker in a state school. That's what it's for. Now, if you don't already realise that, then tough luck. But if you've got a kid in a state school and you still want them to have that education to get by in general societal terms, which is advisable unless you want to put huge amounts of effort in yourself, like 10th Man has,
Right.
well, go on. Go on, whoever's interrupting.
Oh, sorry, honey. I didn't realize I was off the mic at that time.
That's
But
okay.
yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
The process in doing it, I'll get to the point because I'm obviously waffling quite a lot, is to get the kid to think critically. I was privy enough to get that taught to me explicitly. Most people don't. But if you can get them to analyse what they're being taught and assess whether or not it is or isn't correct by various different processes, defining words, whatever you want to go through, I'm not going to keep this waffle on forever, but that leaves the kid at the end critically thinking anyway.
I agree, but doesn't it make you mad sometimes that you literally are seeing the homework and they're telling these kids, not critical thinking, they're telling you this is factual. The sun's 93 million miles away. We're spending 66,000 miles around the sun. All these different things that you hear sometimes with no actual proof of any of this stuff, doesn't it just piss you off sometimes? Because
Not
it's not fair for them to be teaching facts they say it's not.
Not really, when I've just described how useful it can be to pull it apart critically, and the end result of that is that something that is punted as being absolutely factual can be analysed by you personally and assessed for its actual validity. And that process is useful to teach them critical thought. So you can get pissed off that they're teaching something that's not true, but if they went through life never being taught something that was incorrect and then analysing it critically, you'd never have the opportunity to do that. Now, I can appreciate that someone might say, well, that's just positive spin, but that's what life's all about.
Right. You are right on that. And because the world will spit you out, literally.
There seems to be a theme here, though, Nathan, like with your first example. It's really what I'm getting is it's not about shortcuts. It's really about doing the work. Like a lot of people are just lazy and they don't want to apply themselves. They don't want to put the a lot of people, they don't want to put the hard work in, practice it, refine their skills. Critical thinking is essential. It's an excellent point.
Yeah.
And bringing it back
would I
to
teach my children?
your first example about the ledges.
Go ahead.
It's like the way that we're taught the only way to climb that ledge is by blowing yourself up to achieve it. And everyone just goes through the motions of blowing themselves up to get to the ledge until someone figures out another way.
Yeah. Well, in the case of my children, their friends' base has increased because of the Gleason map in their rooms, because they've all been asking what this map is over the last 6 years. And I've been able to actually recently teach them about the black swan and how to calculate the maps of the Earth that they were taught, and to see that the geometric horizon should be this distance, but we're seeing these two things and the horizon beyond that. So does that mean the Earth is a flat level, or is it a ball? Which one? After doing the maps now, you see what I mean? For me, it's been a great experience with the children to learn about the flat Earth and to teach their friends also. And they all want a map, and I gave them a map as well, laminated. It's been fantastic, and everything you've said, I concur with.
And this is the thing: if you're listening in and you're a Glober, for instance, listen to the subcontext of what we're discussing here. We're all discussing how concerned we are for the quality of our kids' education. That's what we're actually discussing. Beyond the fact that we're talking about flat Earth in the subject matter, because that's what the show's about. So that's nothing but positive, isn't it? Everyone here wants the best for their kids and wants to talk and discuss about how they can go to extra efforts to achieve that. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, this is, I hate to call it this, but in that particular aspect, a very positive community. People are concerned about that, to the point where people like Anthony, who hasn't even got kids, will be like, I am concerned for the education structure. It's like, why? Well, because he's concerned about future generations. Isn't that a positive thing? Especially when they're your own and you're actually demonstrating that, putting your money where your mouth is, putting the time and effort in yourself. It's like, well, those are the kind of people that, not for the majority, I can't speak for the majority of flat earthers, but certainly by the standards of the people that come here and talk to me, that's what it seems like, I'll use this word loosely, we are like. Would we all agree?
You were putting your... sorry.
No, you go.
I don't think you need to have children to be concerned about what children generally are being taught in school.
People don't care.
I was just going to say
But
that.
they make it.
I don't have kids, but I'm
pin
concerned about the same thing, because I remember when I was a kid and I was asking questions and I was shut down because the questions I asked wasn't on par with what we were supposed to be talking about. Right? I was told I just need to know that it's gravity because of the test, and that I have to pass the test, and that's it. I don't need to have kids to be concerned about that.
It's a bit like, when Rumpus comes in and he gives the dirty little secret away right at the very, very beginning. He'll make the concession, or he'll make the dirty statement straight away, and then you have the conversation all within that paradigm. They do that in the classroom with the globe. When you're like 5, they show you the globe and they say, this is where you live, and this is how the oceans stick to it, and everyone says, how did they not fall off? And they tell you that dirty little secret then. It's only when you get to like 40 that you start reconsidering it, like I did, and I was like, hang on a minute, now here I am.
Go on, Stacey.
You know,
and do it.
but
It's-
like that positive spin, I appreciate Nathan putting on it because it almost makes you think differently now on the educational system because I see the whole world and all the lies and that why would they lie? We know why they lie. We've been lied to our whole lives. But if you don't go through that, right, and your parents will say, hey, look, this isn't true. You have to validate stuff. I don't know if I'd be awake to the point that I am. So I'm kind of happy that I went through that in a way to see that the BS was happening everywhere, right? And that I need to look into things more and critically think. So yeah, flat Earth kind of makes people go back and think about what they've been taught.
Yeah.
And meanwhile,
the
the globe
educational
shuts down
system.
all critical thinking, and you just have to know that, and that's it, right? You're not.
Mhm.
That's why so many Globers are so like it's almost like a psychopathic thing. Like it's they can't let it go because they weren't given that option when they were a kid. They weren't told, yeah, this is a good idea of what we think it is. They were given it's definite. This is what it is. These are the numbers. This is what you have to know in order to pass the test. So they've taken away that mystery of exploration, that mystery of what could that be. They don't even give them that option. They're just saying, "Oh no, this is it. That's it."
If you want to
It's
hear
insane.
if you want to hear an origin story that describes the process of critical thought from a position where everything was accepted, listen to Jaron of Jaronism's origin of flat Earth story. So how he came to this subject and how he progressed through the subject initially is the story of critical thought from flat Earth realization. That is what Jaronism's story is.
I can say for me too, that's been my journey. I didn't realize that they call it the liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium. It's the essential key you need to progress as a human being. Without it, you're not critical.
Exactly. They don't teach the trivium in public schools, or what?
But what I wanted to add there was that they hold the straw man up that we're the ones trying to mislead the children, you know. And like you were saying, we're actually sitting here discussing what is the best way to instill critical thinking into the next generation so that they don't blindly follow just so stories, you know. But they're always pinning us as the misleading, false information.
But can I ask a question? Were you guys taught critical thinking though? I wasn't taught that in school. I wasn't taught that by my parents at a young age. But I remember being very young and going, "That don't right. That's not right." And I was always questioning. But I wasn't taught to critical think. You know, it was in us. It's almost like it's been taken away from us. So that's my issue with it. Is at 7 years old, I was already thinking about things in a totally different perspective than I was being taught.
So
So where does that come from? Is it taught to you or is it in you?
Yes, it was taught to me when I went to a private school, and then I later found out that it wasn't taught to anybody else in those years that I was being taught it at that private school, because I subsequently went, that school shut down, and I then went to a normal school, or whatever you would call it, state school, after that. And obviously you're not going to know that they haven't been taught what you've been taught. It was only later on in life that I found out, well, people aren't taught that in public schools. And then you look into what's a public school, what's it preparing people for? Well, it's preparing them to be an efficient worker. Well, you don't need critical thought for that.
That's right. That's absolutely correct. When you go to private school, you're possibly going to be controlling those below, you know, the working staff, working class. So you're aspiring to be middle class or upper class when you go to private school. So you're going to be in a position of control, really. And when you go to state schools, you are going to be the working class. Basically, that's what I learned whilst I was growing up, you know, right in the thick of it. I enjoyed it.
Costs nothing to teach a child critical thought. Zero. Nada. Doesn't cost you anything. That's why I'm putting that. Go on.
My
father
used to... Oh, so it's Jin. I was going to say, I don't remember it being taught it specifically as a structured lesson, i.e. today we're doing. But I mean, I'm a bit older than you, Nathan. Mine was all state school. But I certainly remember it being taught in, first of all, applying scientific method and using that. But I remember learning a fair bit about applying reasoning and evaluating evidence in history when we were before we did any subjects, actually looking at sources and evaluating the source and giving that a ranking before you then that may well have, I don't remember my kids being taught that now in terms of history. They're just given memorize these things, but I mean, I'd have been about 10, 11.
Indeed. Yeah, this is...
Yeah, you're right, Adam. You're right, Adam. I had the same training. We in history, we debated history, and we also debated the politics because of war. War and politics go together, and we were doing the Second World War and the First World War, and we were asking whether the decisions made were good for mankind or not, etc., etc. That did help to switch on a little bit of critical thinking. Yes, I agree. I went to schooling from 1961, secondary school in the 70s. So in that period.
Yes, it's an aspect of critical thought. So yes, primary source research is what you're detailing, which yes, they did indeed teach, I'm sure, almost everybody in history. That's what history is, right? But they don't give it you in any massive amount. They're not explicitly telling you how to do it. They're taking you through the process, but they're taking you through it rather than teaching you how to do it. Just there's a distinct difference between teaching you specifically how to do primary source research and then taking you by the hand and doing it in a structured class that leads you to an exercise, an exam at the end.
The other end is...
I can honestly say... Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other end is actually data. It's actually a big part of the pharmacist job is to, particularly with regards to data dissemination, gathering, and then giving that information out for clinical purposes. It is taught at the back end of the degree program in terms of critically evaluating to then make decisions. But it was noticeable that that's put in at the end. You've got to all the end of all your training, and that's when that sort of stuff's then re-put back in as you're then going to have to give out advice that, lives matter on it. So it is reinserted.
Yeah. I had this experience in the army. So I was in the Army Cadets for 3 years and in the Territorial Army for 2 years, okay? And you do learn a little bit of critical thinking. And then I got an extra dose from my father. Where's your common sense? Where's your initiative? Helping you to think properly and do things methodically, and check everything. Yeah, I was lucky in that sense that I had that extra. I only got a little bit at school, but I got a massive dollop in the military, to be quite honest, and it was very interesting indeed.
You got to have critical thinking, right? You guys agree with that? You got to have critical thinking. Hey, just wanted to leave it on a side note. Have you ever looked into flat Earth?
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys said that about history. I hated, like, 8th grade, I think, was my pivotal point. I kind of remember looking back now, or sitting in class, and I hated history so much, and I thought it was a bunch of BS, and we were debating it and everything else and talking about wars and everything, and it made me look at authorities differently, right? What are you teaching me? I don't know. And I hated science back then too. It's like, oh, this is just so stupid. And then all of a sudden now that I've opened up my mind to what the world actually really is, right? And I have that proof. I look at science totally different. I love science. I'm going to go back to my science teacher and go, hey, I want to have a conversation. This is great. But it was 8th grade and history that did it for me to have that critical thinking, to literally say, you know what, forget this. I'm going to raise my hand up and I'm going to start asking questions. But then I started getting in trouble. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Detention and everything else, because they don't want you to ask those questions.
Yeah, we've got those stories here too. Exactly. You start actually expressing critical thought, analysing the subject matter that you're being taught, and they don't like it, they kick you out of the class.
Yep.
Indeed.
Don't dare think too much.
You don't think too much about this.
Asking questions when you're an honor roll student. You're like, what?
You're supposed to listen. You're supposed to repeat. That's it. You're supposed to listen and repeat. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to comprehend it.
Sorry. The reason they fear flat Earth
Never
so much.
criticize your teacher. Never answer back, and don't be rude to your parents.
Never interrupt.
And respect your elders.
Go ahead, 10th man.
About interrupting, yeah. The reason they fear flat Earth so much is they don't have you focused on when the bankers lie or the politicians lie or history rewritten and it lies, or medical profession, you find a quack doctor. They're okay with those kind of lies. But the minute you say flat Earth, you hit the biggest lie of all, because it changes the whole educational system. They can't teach evolution. They can't teach Big Bang. They can't teach that your life means nothing, that there's no accountability one day to God. They can't have you go there. That's why flat Earth is a dagger to all the lies.
I don't know if I agree with.
Okay, that's just what I feel.
Well, no, what I
would agree with that. I would agree with that.
I would agree with that too,
Okay,
10th
let's not
man.
run
Yeah,
into
once
the
you
actual
know about
discussion.
flat
We will
Earth,
agree and
dude,
disagree.
you're not
Hold
really
on.
surprised
Hello?
anymore.
Hello?
You're really
Hello?
Anymore.
Hello?
I hear you, Nathan.
Hello? There was an actual discussion? Go ahead, John. John?
Yeah, the whole idea that heliocentrism is intrinsically bad, it's within the framework of materialism and naturalism. I think it actually holds society together better when people aren't believing in unicorns and magical things. Now, I don't necessarily think it, like if tomorrow everyone found out the Earth was flat, I don't know if it would be a good thing.
Well, John, what you're saying is exactly
yeah,
the description for heliocentrism, the magical things that don't exist. So you said it needs to be here so people don't believe in unicorns, but the whole heliocentric is a unicorn.
Well, whether it be a good thing
Thank
or a
you.
bad
And
thing,
we're not living in good times now. We are not living in good times at the moment.
Jeez,
We're not
there's
living
two
in good
people
times.
talking. Jin, I will bring you in, but you've got to slip in at the right time. Go ahead, Chocolate, and then Eugene.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
No, you're good, Jim. I was just saying to follow up on John. He said he doesn't necessarily think it'd be a good thing. And while I might agree, a lot of people lose their shit. Good thing or a bad thing, if it's the true thing, then I think in the end it'll be a good thing. Because, sometimes you just gotta rip the Band-Aid off real hard and fast. Because slowing it down just doesn't work. And it just hurts more. That's my statement.
Go ahead, Jin. Thanks,
10.
Chocolate.
Oh, sorry.
Then you, Melon.
Thanks. Man.
Yes, sorry about my interruption earlier. Basically, I was just going to say this. Earth has been hijacked. Deception has been perpetuated across the flat Earth, and humanity is suffering. It's been enslaved, and that can never be a good thing. So if it's the truth, it must come out. That's it. That's all I'm on now. Sorry.
Mel.
And likewise, 10th man, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think you made a great point there about accountability. I think the more responsible people can be for themselves and aware that we inhabit Earth together, we share it, we're all here together. We might not always see eye to eye or get along, but when we can be accountable for ourselves and accept responsibility for ourselves and our actions, I don't think we have to worry about the creator then, I think there's an acceptance. It's just my
That's a good way of
thoughts.
putting it. Don't have to worry about it, and I think that's a lot of a problem, That's a problem for our opponents. In other words, their skeletons in their closet makes them worry about the creator when they're faced with it, because they come to this subject, and inevitably that will either, deep down, they'll know that that's something they have to assess, and they don't like it, and they'd rather have the nihilism, they'd rather have the heliocentric model as their world. Chocolate and John, go ahead. Who wants to go first?
I was going to say that might be one way to take it, is that they try to deal
roboting
with it, or they could, load up a bunch of books and try to, fight their way out of whatever the prison they think they're in.
What, get to Mars?
Oh, sorry, is that better?
Yeah, it's fine. We heard 90% of it, don't worry.
Yeah. No. If they, I was saying one way they could take it is how you said, or there could be a large group of mentally ill people that decide that they're going to, fight their way out of this container now.
Are you implying, because we've got two different, hold on, I've got two different views that I want to cover right now. I've got Chocolate and John. John saying that people might go nuts if they find out, because then they're going to try and fight their way out of the container or find the edge or whatever. Okay, well, that's a possibility, and certainly I've pondered on it myself. But then we've also got Chocolate saying that there's a controlled release. In other words, they're trying to suppress the truth, but the truth will out, and delaying it is just going to cause more problems. Well, those are two very, I mean, they're not paralleling views, but they're very different views in terms of your thoughts going forward. And I want to explore both. I was just going to focus on Chocolate saying, well, you think it's a controlled release then, Chocolate? But if you can hold on to that thought just for a second, John, and then we'll come back to that one. But Chocolate, you go first.
I don't know. Maybe it was loud behind me or something. I never said control release. All I said was basically that, like after John said, if everybody found out, it would be a bad thing, right? And like I said, I agree. I think a lot of people would lose their shit, but I also think that if it just happened like that and it was just blatantly put out there like that, well, if it's true, then that would be the good thing to do, whether people lose their shit or not, because it's true, right? And, if we had, if we didn't have this lie to grow up on all our life, it wouldn't have been so hard. But now, because so many of us have grown up with this lie, it's impossible to separate from it. And as far as the thing with the container, like I have a coworker who says that, like, the idea of being inside of a container, it's like crazy. And I'm like, well, it's obviously not very small, because you can get in an aircraft and fly around for like 20 hours and not hit anything. So why does that make you feel some type of way? And to her, it's just like the idea of being contained, it bothers her. So I can see a lot of people going that route. I'm done.
But everybody loses their shit, right? We all have problems that make us lose our shit in life. You lose a loved one or whatever's going on in your life, so we lose our shit. But when they're lying to you about your everything around your reality, what you're standing on, I want to know that truth. The only thing you have in this world of freedom is in your mind. So would I want them to control my mind and what I believe and see around me? No. In fact, it makes it easier in your life when you're losing your shit with loved ones or anything else in your life to go back to going, you know what? I have sympathy and empathy for people, and I can even give myself some leniency because this world is messed up. Society has got their minds all warped. So you know what? It's okay. And at the end of the day, I know what I'm standing on, and they cannot control my mind. So for me, yes, you might lose your shit a little bit, but don't we all? You'll get that, you'll embrace it, and then you'll go, okay, I'm fine again. But it makes you a stronger person, and it makes you awake. They can't control that, take that from you. So for me, yes, the whole world needs to know. And they might lose their shit a little bit, but then they'll gather that back again, and they'll have their mind set where it's supposed to be. Looking, critical thinking, all that, finding the truth, because the truth will always set you free. Stand in it, own it every single day.
Perfect. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!